transferring to PhD programs, very common once again, and not a lot of people actually openly talk about this stuff because there's just a lot of emotion that goes with it, right? There's lots of emotional baggage. There's lots of different reasons, but I think the three biggest reasons why people actually transfer in PhD programs. The first one is the PhD candidate, the person that was actually, or the PhD student, they actually learned, and they learned what they like to do and what they didn't like to do. And that's a really big thing. Do not underestimate that, because you are learning so much. And once you learn what you like to do, often you're like, oh, maybe I wanted to do this instead. And you don't know what you like to do until you actually understand what the material is about and you start getting into that particular thing. Now, there's a second reason that I think is very common that comes up on a regular basis, and this is just that the PhD student, the candidate, didn't like some aspect of their current program, right? So maybe it is the material that they're learning. Maybe it was actually their advisors or some of the faculty members. If you don't know, that it's a very political process in a lot of different ways. And one of them is just the whole politics of getting along with other people, right? That's a big thing. We're all people. And that's, a big thing that I'm trying to communicate to an outside world, that when I was going through, there was nobody in my family that went to university before me. I think you called it first generation. Now my sister went and whatnot, which is amazing. And I got a couple of other relatives that are doing it at this point. But when I went, nobody was doing that. So we had really no comprehension of who, what, and, what PhDs are and what they do and what are faculty members. But truly, we're all just kind of people, and we're all kind of weird in lots of different ways. And sometimes we're weird in negative ways, right? So we do get in sort of politics, and there's things like envy and all that kind of stuff comes up. And that's an important thing that you should be well aware of, right? It's like any organization. It's a very political process. So three, it is the third reason is the PhD student didn't perform well in their current program and they're looking to switch to others. So whether it is that they just didn't do well in the coursework, or maybe that they're not doing well in their thesis and they're looking to switch to another program, that's pretty common as well. In fact, it's probably very common. And you decide maybe some point that you're like, I don't like this one. I'm looking for an easier program. Now, the problem is if you're thinking about switching or transferring to another PhD program, the third reason is probably about the worst reason to suggest to somebody else, because every PhD program is going to be difficult. It doesn't matter what you're doing. If you're doing religious studies, if you are doing mathematics, if you're doing physics, if you're doing business administration, whatever it is you're doing a PhD in, it's all difficult and it's not going to be easy. And the career prospects are not there definitely is, different career prospects in terms of the thing that you sort of choose to go into and specialize that you go into. But, it's not going to be easier in any sort of way. It's up to you. It's really entrepreneurial. It's very tough. And the image you want to think about is yourself being an entrepreneur, and you're kind of building your career. And if you're not really into that and you can't deal with sort of uncertainty that you have, then it's going to be tough for absolutely everybody and everything, every program that you do. It's not unusual, and I'm just telling you that at this moment. It's really not unusual to find it difficult, and you're going to find, if you find the current program you're in difficult, you're going to find another program that you're going into difficult, or, even more difficult, because you're kind of an outsider sometimes. So you don't want to communicate that message to somebody that you are performing poorly and you want to switch to another program. And the better rationale that you should be communicating to the outside audience, whoever you're communicating it to, I don't care if it's your parents or, it's the other PhD program, that your interest changed and you're really interested in this new program for whatever X, Y, and Z. And it's got to be a really clear rationale depending on what you've learned, right? So it has to fit with what you're interested in, and you should be communicating that this is really your passion going forward. That new area really fits with what you're trying to do. And that is the key thing. So there's a lot of different other tips that I'd like to communicate or sort of share at this moment in terms of transferring. And this is all just kind of stuff that I've learned along the way and just watching other people, on my own experiences and all that kind of crazy stuff. I never transfer a PhD program, but definitely, I mean, who's not in a PhD program, right? So some tips to really think about, right? So if you're thinking of switching to a different PhD program or a different institution, or maybe it's a different advisor or supervisor, whatever it is, do it sooner rather than later. It's not going to get a lot better in terms of the material you're learning is a material you're learning, and it doesn't necessarily get all that much better going forward. And so you should switch. Do it quicker. It's going to be a lot better. And you really don't want to communicate that. So the second thing that's important is just don't communicate that that the current program you're in is either distasteful for you, or that you're finding it difficult in some sort of way. That's not going to be a good signal to the marketplace, right? So again, all PhD programs are important. They're meant to, or they're difficult. They're meant to be, right? That's the whole point of it. So if you're switching because of the difficulty, maybe you should be thinking about alternative things other than a PhD, right? That's probably much more along the lines is that maybe it's just not sort of fitting for what you are doing, right? The third thing that you should be thinking about is really look to the long run. Now, I'm suggesting for you to think 10, 15 years out. So you want to look at what faculty are doing at 10, 15 years out from where you are right now. So right now, it's probably going to be difficult. Every PhD program is difficult. And, that's our jobs as supervisors and people that are training you is to make it difficult at this moment because A, we want to make sure that we're only selecting the people that are really good. And then B, we're making sure that you're going to represent us well as supervisors or, a faculty well in the marketplace, right? That's an important thing to think about. So we're going to try to make it difficult. Not really intentionally, but it's just part of the process. It's kind of what the market demands us to do, unfortunately. So, but you want to think about 10, 15 years out, where do you want to go? And if that kind of makes sense, if you look at your advisors, maybe what is called maybe associate or full professor, what they're doing, if you're thinking that's interesting, well, then that's maybe the way to go, right? And that's the thing that you should be thinking about is just push through that. A really good analogy for you to think about is this is a lot like you are being trained, and I have a very good friend that is a partner at a very good law, and he's a partner in a law partnership, very good, very prestigious, one of these big hundreds of people that are in it, and it was stinking tough to get to that partnership stage and to become a partner. It was really tough for him. He had to put in a lot of hours, and it is no different than a PhD. You have to put in a lot of hours. It's very much just doing, like the associate sort of level in when you're in a law practice. You're kind of just putting in a lot of the work. And you got to get through that before you actually become a partner. And, it doesn't get a lot better, but there is sort of autonomy and things like that ends up happening, which gives you a lot of feedback and reward and all that kind of stuff, right? Like you start seeing the bigger picture is what I'm saying at that point. And that's really fun to see that kind of stuff. A fourth thing and I've really tried to do this myself, is build your own PhD program, right? So think about what you would like your PhD program to be like and just build it. Start communicating with people that are like that, that you find interesting, and try to build it gradually and slowly over time. That's going to really help you out going forward, right? So that's really what you want to think about. And then the fifth thing is The people that are currently in your program, if you go and talk to anybody that's in your program right now and you're thinking of switching out of that program, they're going to probably try to persuade you not to leave because they've already invested a significant amount into you because you're a resource, right? You have to view yourself as a resource. And this is not in a derogatory way. This is what we would train managers to do if you're doing an MBA or an undergraduate in business, for example. That's what I teach. You sort of view them as a resource, and you've invested a lot in those resources and you haven't seen a return on those resources. So it's in the interest of the manager, which is the supervisor, or whoever it is you're talking to keep you going forward so that they can see a return on their investment, right? So just be well aware of that, and that's going to be something that you have to communicate and navigate that particular issue. Probably won't get into that at this moment right now. It's very complicated, but it's something to think about going forward. So hopefully you like this video. Give me